Good morning. My name is Faye Gunther, president of UFCW 3000. We represent over 50,000 frontline essential workers in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. We are here today on behalf of 9 UFCW locals representing 12 states and the District of Columbia. Combined, this is over 100,000 Kroger and Albertsons frontline essential grocery store workers. Our grocery store members have been on the front line during the pandemic, deemed essential, but often treated as disposable. Today, we are here to ensure grocery store workers are heard as it relates to the Kroger-Albertsons merger and the $4 billion dividend payout. Joining me today in person is our members from UFCW 400, the DMV area, President Kathy Finn, 770, Jim Araby, 5, and Jose Perez from 324 in California, President Kim Cordova, 7, Colorado and Wyoming. We also have UFCW grocery store workers from across the nation here to speak, and I will introduce some of them shortly so you can hear directly from the workers most impacted. They will share their experience and concerns about this proposed merger and proposed dividend payout because it directly impacts their lives, their families, and their local communities. Our job as UFCW is to ensure grocery store workers' concerns are front and center during these merger discussions. Our main concerns include the following. 1, this merger is a threat to consumers because it will reduce competition and increase prices. The customer is always front and center because customers, along with the workers, make grocery stores successful. This merger is a threat to business, including farmers, along the food supply chain. We feed the United States together. This merger is a threat to essential workers who could lose their jobs, and for those remaining, have their wages and benefits further squeezed. We also oppose the proposed dividend payout, which would take $4 billion of cash from Albertsons and give it to a select few rich shareholders, including 2 private equity groups, Cerberus and Apollo. We know $4 billion could be better used to make Albertsons stronger, lower prices for consumers, invest in store safety, and pay higher wages and benefits to recruit and retain essential workers who keep our food and our supplies safe. When we heard the news about the proposed merger, the local UFCW unions here today organized quickly. We reached out to our local and federal elected officials and regulators. In Washington State, we reached out to our Attorney General, and a local court put a temporary restraining order on the $4 billion dividend payment that will remain in place through our upcoming hearing scheduled in King County, Washington on December 9th. This dividend payout to a special few shareholders should be scrutinized as part of the total merger, and we believe it should be stopped permanently. We want Albertsons to remain a strong, viable company. And let me be clear, we want both of these companies to succeed, just as separate entities. There is so much at stake for all of us. With that, I would like to introduce Andreas Besseril, front-end supervisor, King Super, Kroger in Denver, Colorado, UFCW 7 member.
Good morning, my name is Andres and I am a member of UFCW Local 7 of Colorado and Wyoming. I live in Denver and I've worked for King Soopers for 12 years, where currently I am a front-end supervisor. What I love most about my job is taking care of our customers and helping people. I take pride in my work, in excelling in the tasks asked of me by the company, and just making someone's day better. I know I am not alone, and it gives me great pride to work amongst such amazing colleagues. I want to take a minute to remind the audience here in Washington that, like me, hundreds of thousands of frontline essential workers spend most of our lives at stores helping families put food on their table, regardless of the circumstance, during natural disasters, in the face of active shootings, and of course during the pandemic. During the last few years, many of us sacrificed our health, that of our families, and even our lives to get that job done. It is because of this sacrifice that I am here today. I am standing up for my fellow essential grocery workers who are heroes and whose livelihoods are now being threatened by this proposed $25 billion Kroger-Albertsons merger. Like my fellow grocery workers, I'm scared of what this merger will mean for me as a worker and what happens to my job when hundreds and hundreds of local grocery stores are closed. But I want to emphasize that this is not just about me. The merger would create a ripple effect for potentially tens of thousands of grocery employees and their families. Lost wages, lost benefits like hard-earned pension plans, lost health care coverage, and higher grocery prices. Our local suppliers, farmers, and ranchers who create jobs in Colorado and Wyoming will also be hurt as this new mega company will control shelf prices with no competition. Two grocers, the combined Albertsons, Kroger, and Walmart would control 70% or more of the market in over 160 cities in the U.S. In smaller communities across Colorado and Wyoming, like in Durango, Colorado, where the two companies will control more than 90% of the market, there will be no competition. Instead, these towns will be left with major job cuts and higher food prices thanks to duopoly. The last thing I want to say is that we want and need both Kroger and Albertsons to thrive and be successful. They are important businesses that provide jobs, food, and medicine for our communities and business for local suppliers. We just want them to thrive as separate entities and call on the FTC to hear our concerns and stop the merger. Thank you for your time, and a special thanks to Subcommittee Chair Senator Klobuchar and Ranking Member Senator Lee for holding a hearing later today to discuss the potential negative impacts of this deal.
Next, we'll have Judy Wood, cake decorator, Albertsons, Orange County, California, UFCW 324 member.
Good morning. My name is Judy Wood. I have been a grocery worker for 34 years with the Albertsons Company in Southern California. During that time, I have loved working with my community and making sure that their celebrations, their birthdays, their holidays are all best served by their neighborhood grocery store bakery. My customers have become like a family to me over the years, as well as my coworkers. I fear for my customers and my coworkers if this merger between Kroger and Albertsons goes through. Both workers and customers will be affected. Stores will have the ability to raise prices without consequence because competition between stores will no longer exist. What will happen to working families when they can't afford to pay Kroger's higher prices? We are not talking about luxury cars or expensive clothing here. We're talking about food, which is an essential to survive. Another concern that is at the forefront is store closures. I remember in 2014, 2015, the Safeway Albertsons merger. We were told by the management that there was nothing to worry about. I am now hearing the same message from management again. Because of this messaging, many of our workers feel that they will just put on a new uniform and they will go to work as usual. But if history has taught us anything, we know this is not true. In 2014, when Albertsons and Safeway merged, Hagen was the store that took over, and they were divested, and they ran those stores into the ground. Many of my coworkers were caught off guard because they were told there was nothing to worry about. Yet soon enough, many of them did not have a job to go back to. We were shocked by the outcome and had no idea that this would happen to us. Just as people are starting to make themselves right after economic downturns in the pandemic, Kroger and Albertsons are here once again pulling the rug out from underneath us. A year ago, I spent time on a team going to all of our area stores collecting survey data from the Ralph's workers. I met so many hardworking people who struggle to make ends meet. We have workers that must live in hotels and some who live in their cars because they cannot afford the basic housing. There are many workers who cannot even afford the groceries that they are selling in the stores. This merger will only make situations like theirs worse. Even though we gained a historic new contract this year, workers' incomes are not where they need to be right now and keep up with record inflation. If this merger happens, whole families will be disrupted. It is estimated over 5,700 workers could lose their jobs, and that's just in Southern California. We need to do everything we can to fight this merger. We need workers, customers, and our elected officials to all work together and stop this merger. We need our community to put the pressure on Albertsons and Kroger to halt this merger and stop a massive payout that enriches insiders at the expense of workers. Kroger and Albertsons have put profits over the well-being of customers and the well-being of their workers. It is all about the money for them. We will not sit back as our communities are destroyed. We will fight this merger, because when we fight, we win.
Next, I'd like to invite Ricardo Valadez, Americans for Financial Reform, up to join us.
Hi, my name is Ricardo Valadez with Americans for Financial Reform. We are a coalition of over 200 groups, including consumer advocates, labor unions, community groups, and small businesses. I manage our work around private equity reform, and we've been pushing for comprehensive legislation that would change the way that private equity operates. It's known as the Stop Wall Street Looting Act, and it was first introduced in 2019. Those of us who follow the private equity industry often compare private equity's practices to piracy because they engage in what we see as de facto looting. They're walking away with money, in this case billions of dollars, and leaving companies worse off, often even in bankruptcy. But unlike the pirates of yore, they don't have to risk life and limb. They don't have to pick up a sword and board a ship. In fact, the way they structure these deals and takeovers, they often have to risk very little of their own money, let alone their lives. But their actions do harm other people, make no mistake. Whether it's taking Toys R Us into bankruptcy or the destruction of 1.3 million jobs due to retail bankruptcies, the private equity playbook is to put the risk on the companies that they buy and run, first by saddling them with loads of debt. This $4 billion dividend currently proposed by Albertsons comes atop of the $4 billion Cerberus has already extracted from the company during its ownership, partial or otherwise. Now they want a dividend that is 57 times the size of any other dividend Albertsons has ever paid out. This, in our eyes, is straight up looting, and there's no reason for this payout other than to make some already very rich people even richer. Now, Kroger and Albertsons are trying to pretend that the dividend payout is somehow separate from the merger. As you've heard, there are lots of reasons to oppose this merger, but the notion that these two matters, the dividend and the merger, are separate is just false. In their own merger announcement, they stated, quote, "As part of the transaction, Albertson Companies will pay a special cash dividend of up to $4 billion to its shareholders," end quote. Do not be fooled. This merger is bad, and this looting only makes it worse. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Naomi Oligario, front-end checker, Safeway, Port Orchard, Washington, UFCW 3000 member.
I have worked for 37 years as a grocery store worker at Safeway. In all those years, I have served my customers with great customer service and partnered with my coworkers to get the job done. But my body, like so many other grocery store workers, has taken a hit as a result of the grinding work that we do, and we continue to do, and have had physical injuries and needed to be off at times for medical reasons. But I've always come back, and I've kept going and getting the job done. And there are also many other younger workers, like Keenan Calhoun, who joins me here today, who works at Fred Meyer, a Kroger store in Seattle, who are part of the story as well. Over the last 3 years, we have lived through the COVID experience, and me and coworkers have served our community and served our employers and provided essential services in a time of crisis. Over the years, our work as cashiers, produce and dairy clerks, meat and seafood departments, bakers, nighttime stockers, and price changers and helper clerks, and many more, we have all helped make our stores run. We have thousands of members like me who work for Safeway and Albertsons. I was one of the thousands who were working for Safeway back in 2015 when Safeway was taken over by Albertsons, and the Hagen's fiasco happened. They told us how it was going to make things better, and it wasn't. After it was approved and everything settled, we saw over hundreds of stores close across the western US. Workers lost their jobs. I have new friends who had worked for years and lost their livelihoods. We all are concerned with this proposed merger and the $4 billion giveaway to rich, greedy corporate shareholders, instead of investing in us, the workers who help make the profits. We need safer stores, our customers need lower prices, we need more competition, not less.
Next I'd like to invite Lulu Berg, front-end supervisor checker at Vaughn's in Camarillo, California, UFCW 770 member.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lulu Berg. I work as a front-end supervisor at Vaughn's, Camarillo, California. I've worked as a grocery store worker for 26 years. I love my job, my employees, and my customers. Throughout the COVID pandemic, we have done our best to make sure our customers were able to get the food and necessities they need. As a frontline worker, we've gone through a lot during the pandemic. We've put our lives on the line. I personally got COVID, but went back to work as soon as I recovered. We've been loyal to our company and to our customers. This proposed merger is unfair to workers, customers, and our communities. Many of us here today have already suffered the adverse consequence of previous mergers. I personally went through a devastating experience when my Vaughn's store was sold to Hagen as part of the 2014-2015 Albertsons Vaughn's merger. At that time, we were tricked into believing that it was going to be a good transition. The company promised us that we would keep our jobs, wages, and benefits, but that was not the case. In a few months, Hagen shut down. Thousands of co-workers and I lost our jobs. Over 100 employees were laid off from my store alone. As a single mom, I struggled to provide for my 2 children. I did not have a savings. I had to juggle 2 jobs, cleaning houses and waitressing to be able to pay my bills and put food on the table. We were all put on a waiting list to get our jobs back at Vaughn's. We had to reapply for new positions. I was rehired at a new store in Oxnard, and I had to commute almost an hour to get there. Because of my experience and my seniority over 18 years, I was able to get my job back after 2 months. Other coworkers were unemployed for over a year or more, and some of them never got their jobs back. Others came back at a low wage rate and have never been able to recover the standard of living they had before the merger. We definitely don't want to go through that same devastating experience again. We are here today, workers of California and other states across the nation, to call on the Senate and to trust Judiciary Subcommittee and the FTC to not allow the merger to go through. No worker should have to go through this again. The Kroger and Albertsons merger must be stopped. Thank you.
For our final speaker, I'd like to invite Jane St. Louis, front-end associate, Safeway, Damascus, Maryland, UFCW 400 member.
Good morning. My name is Jane St. Louis, and I have worked for Safeway for 30 years. I am a proud union member and shop steward with UFCW Local 400. Like many of my fellow union members, I have a long career in the grocery industry, and I look forward to retiring on my union pension. A pension is a promise, and not just any promise. A pension is a promise that we have planned our lives around. A promise that after years of hard work and many dedicated my co-workers, I will have a secure retirement. But I am here today because I am worried. I am worried about what the future holds for me and thousands of other grocery workers like me who are counting on pension we have earned when we retire. With the merger of Albertsons and Kroger, our future is now in jeopardy. We know this merger will result in store closures, but the worst part is we don't know which stores. In Damascus, where I work, there is a Kroger-owned Harris Teeter store only a few miles away. Harris Teeter workers don't have a union. They don't have a pension and a secure retirement. They don't have our health care benefits. They don't have the protection of a union contract, which one of our stores will close if these companies merge. How many workers like me supported to a plan of our future? Keeping our pension has not been easy. 3 years ago, the private equity executives controlling Albertsons wanted to stop funding our pension and put thousands of us at risk of losing our pensions and benefits. We nearly had to go on strike just to keep what we had already earned. And let's be clear, these private equity guys are not from the grocery industry. They have never worked in one of our stores. They don't know or care about our business. All they care about is making money for themselves. And now they are trying to give themselves a $4 billion payday before this merger is even reviewed by the FTC. What does my future hold working for a company without any money? How will Safeway keep its promise to fund our pension? You can see why workers like me are worried. So I am here, along with my fellow union members from across the country, to call on the FTC to stop this merger and stop the private equity executives at Cerberus from sucking all the money out of Albertsons before it's too late. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful stories from grocery store workers. That's why it's so important that grocery store workers are centered in these conversations. I want to thank the elected officials who are supporting us, UFCW officers, frontline essential grocery store workers, and consumer advocates. And most of all, I want to thank you, all the customers that are out there who shop in our stores, because without you, Albertsons and Kroger would not exist. I also want to thank Senator Lee and Senator Klobuchar for your leadership in calling for today's hearing. UFCW grocery store workers and officers are available for follow-up questions upon request.